Washington.
Take the hassle out of buying a car with NorthwestWheels.com.
Word on Monica Lewinsky.
We now join this program in progress
On Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from CBS News in Washington, Bob Schieffer.
Good morning again. Joining us from San Francisco this morning, Senator John Kerry. With us from Los Angeles, Senator Robert Torricelli. I guess we should explain to our viewers, gentlemen, you're not trying to get as far away from Washington as you can, that you actually have business, both of you, in California. Senator Torricelli, you were with the president last night at a Democratic fundraiser. I would just ask you this. People have been talking about a deal. Did he seem any more amenable to a deal last night? Because I hear all these attacks on Republicans and wonder if he wants to deal now.
Well, he seems like a man with a decidedly different view of things than just a week ago. What a difference a few days makes. A week ago, we were all concerned about the release of the videotape from the grand jury. It became a major element in convincing the American people that this inquiry has gone too far. What appeared like an avalanche a week ago now appears to be a strikingly partisan affair. This president feels I think, a new confidence about this matter. The president feels a new confidence. Well, Senator Kerry, you've been talking about some kind of a deal here, some sort of an arrangement to avoid going to impeachment hearings. You still think that's possible? Because the president and the First Lady this week launched these attacks on Republicans.
Well, I wish they hadn't, to be honest with you. I don't think that that was advisable, but I do think that whether or not any arrangement can be made or some kind of shortened constitutional process depends really on the Republicans. I'm not arguing that you should not follow through the constitutional process here. We've been sent a referral to the Congress, to the House, by the prosecutor under a law which has alleged impeachable offenses. But it seems to me it's in the hands of the Republican-controlled Congress and in the hands of the Speaker predominantly as to whether or not they're prepared to try to help America, to help the country, resolve this in a way that's in the best interests of the nation, not the best interests of the party. And every indication, Bob, is that the hardliners in the Republican Party in the House want to press this issue for electoral purposes. They think it's going to help them in the election. So I think to put a constitutional process, impeachment, ahead of the country in favor of an election strategy invites enormous recrimination from the American people. Senator, I think it's very dangerous.
Senator Kerry, you have apparently talked to House Speaker Newt Gingrich about having some kind of threshold hearings, as you call them, with a bipartisan group of congressional leaders. What was his response to that suggestion?
To be honest with you, the Speaker and I did not get far into substance. We talked briefly about sitting down to talk, and then I think the week's momentum sort of took over from his ability and our ability to be able to do that. I think the Speaker struck me in our conversation as being very reasonable and very prepared to try to move, but that changed, obviously, over the course of a day or so. I don't know precisely what changed it. I've heard stories about what changed it. The bottom line is this. The announcements made last week by both Henry Hyde and the Speaker seem to indicate that they're prepared to run headlong down this road towards impeachment. You know, impeachment is a political process, yes, but it's a process that's supposed to reflect the American people. It's political only in the sense that Congress does it rather than the courts, and Congress ought to listen to the American people on this one. The American people understand what this case is about, and they want us to deal with it in a mature and dignified way.
Senator Torricelli, you just heard Senator Kerry say that he believes it's a mistake for the President and the First Lady to launch these attacks as they did last week on Republicans in the Congress. Do you agree with that?
Well, the President's also in the middle of an electoral season and is very frustrated that his education initiatives, his health care initiatives, tobacco, campaign finance reform, that the 105th Congress has come to no substantive achievement. I don't think the President can be blamed for expressing that frustration or defining his own vision of where the Congress should be going. I don't think it's of any particular moment that there is this partisan discord at the moment with the Speaker about those substantive issues. The question of whether or not there's to be some negotiated end to the Monica Lewinsky affair has not really yet ripened. The House of Representatives has its responsibilities. I suspect it will vote an impeachment inquiry. But then the Senate, as the trier of fact, has its responsibilities. So I think whether or not there be people coming together and deciding on a reprimand or a censure is some time away, but simply because it initially had some negative reactions, or the House justifiably is insisting upon its prerogatives, does not mean this is not ultimately going to happen.
It sounds to me like you've resigned yourself to the fact that there are going to be impeachment hearings.
I think the House of Representatives at this point, having received a $40 million inquiry by Mr. Starr, the level of current discord is going to feel incumbent upon itself to do its own investigation and to hear the facts. But that does not mean that having happened, that there aren't going to be Republican leaders in the Senate, together with many of us, Democrats, who are not going to want to have some resolve of this matter. It is fine to say that the Senate has the power to convict and the House to impeach, but this is still, in a democratic society, reversing the enfranchisement of American voters in 1996, reversing a presidential election, in fact, is not done lightly. And with 70% of the American people wanting this matter closed, many Republican leaders in the Senate who now talk bravely about removing the president from office, upon reflection, I think, will want to have an exit from this problem.
Senator Kerry, let me ask you this. The president is, or his lawyers at least, are talking about settling the Paula Jones case. Do you support that? Will that help the president?
Sure. I think that anything the president can do to resolve each of the issues here is important. I made my suggestion about testifying prior to his tape appearing and prior to the refusal of the Republicans to entertain some kind of discussion. I wouldn't advise him to do that now, obviously, absent some kind of agreement. But, you know, there's a threshold issue here. I mean, you can rush headlong down the road towards a whole inquiry in hearings, but there's an initial issue which is sort of a probable cause hearing. Does the Starr report, taken at face value, in its worst light, present an impeachable offense? And it seems to me in 4 or 5 or 6 days you ought to be able to proceed to resolve that threshold issue.
Who would you want to call together, Senator, to do this?
Well, I think you have constitutional experts in the country. Now, I mean, clearly they're on a track.
Experts, not politicians? Experts, not congressional leaders? I mean,
I think those are issues of law and those are issues of precedent, and they are issues of judgment about the intention of the framers of the Constitution and the history of impeachment. And it seems to me there's a record there that you can draw from. Now, most likely, they would decide on a relatively partisan basis that, yes, they want to proceed forward. It could, in fact, be impeachable, and then they'll have some hearings. But I'm saying, again, those don't have to be prolonged. This is not a complicated case. There are not a lot of witnesses. And much of the fact pattern here could be stipulated to by the president. I know from some of his attorneys they're prepared to stipulate to large measure of the facts here. America does not need a protracted political morass here that's foisted on us by people who want to pursue an election strategy rather than a legitimate, mature, dignified inquiry.
Senator Torricelli, we have about 30 seconds left. Do you think the president would ever stipulate that he lied to the Paula Jones lawyers or that he lied to the grand jury?
I think that over these weeks or months, what will evolve is that the president can make a statement. Indeed, he is open to correct the record of the grand jury and make clear that some matters could have been answered differently. Remember, this is also a legal matter, and clarifying his statements and perjury are not the same issue.
Correct.
So if you had the president to pay some fine covering costs, the Congress to make a statement clear that his conduct was reprehensible, which it was, and the president making some clarification of the statements he made previously under oath, I think all parties would be satisfied.
All right.
But again, we are not there yet. The situation has to ripen. I agree with John Kerry. I think there should be an initial inquiry to see whether the threshold of impeachment has been met. The House having acted, then we're prepared.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks to both of you. When we come back, we're going to talk with the Democrats' chief investigative counsel on the Judiciary Committee in a minute.
This
This portion of Face the Nation is brought to you by Fidelity Investments, where 12 million investors put their trust, and by Texaco, a world of energy.
Who are these people? They go to the strangest places, work in the tightest quarters, and gladly keep the oddest hours. Who are they? Forever probing and prodding, digging, exploring. Who are these people? They are Texaco, and what they do is find the energy the world needs to keep on running. Texaco, a world of energy.
We spend an amazing amount of time selecting our fund managers and our analysts.
Everybody here loves the stock market, loves trying to figure out companies and understand their business better.
We have very bright people. We have people that work amazingly hard.
To me, this is my dream job. Picking the right stock is a great feeling because you know it has a direct impact on so many shareholders.
We pick our people just as carefully as we select our stocks.
Visit our website or call your advisor.
Per generazioni la famiglia Capece ha prodotto il miglior olio d'oliva di tutta l'Umbria. All'improvviso il mondo è cambiato. Globalizzazione, tragedia.
Perché piangi?
E piango perché tu devi partire per salvare la famiglia.
Ma nonna, c'è un modo nuovo di fare le cose. Io non devo partire.
Come? Mi fai piangere per niente.
Joining us now, Abby Lowell, the Chief Investigative Counsel for the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, making his first appearance on the Sunday circuit. Thank you for coming, Mr. Lowell. You heard both these Democratic senators talking about some sort of deal to short-circuit this in some way. You think there are going to be hearings?
I think there's going to be proceedings. I don't know about hearings. I mean, so far, I think people understand that there's something wrong about the process thus far. I mean, Republicans at this point, who have the votes, have proceeded basically as the job of the committee to be a filter to the internet. We have taken tens of thousands of documents and dumped them out there without having any standards to evaluate whether they mean anything or whether they're relevant. I mean, that's just one of the issues. When Democrats yell about bipartisanship and its lack or unfairness, they're talking about that. They're talking about the fact that Americans are not being able to see the proceedings of the Judiciary Committee and see these important events being discussed. They're talking about the fact that Republicans are making unilateral requests for information from the courts without Democrats even being told that that's going to happen. So that's what is meant when people hear the phrase bipartisan not being a event or something like the fairness that people want to have happen.
Well, do you think it would be appropriate at this point to bypass the Judiciary Committee as these senators are talking about?
I don't think that's possible. It's not precedential. It's not in the way it's supposed to be. I don't think there's anything wrong, however. When people talk about a deal or censure or reprimand, I think that reflects that the American people want an expeditious end to this. I think they also, they can't have it both ways. If we've put all the evidence out to the American people, and the American people see it, and they say, we don't think this is an impeachable offense, we'd like some punishment or we'd like something, then members of Congress shouldn't be saying, well, at the same time, we're not going to listen to the American people. So that reflects, I think, both Americans wanting expedition and Americans wanting fairness.
But, Mr. Lowell, some people are talking about widening the scope of this inquiry. One of them is House Speaker Newt Gingrich. What would your reaction to that be if Whitewater were thrown in, Travelgate, Filegate?
There's no legal basis for having this investigation in the House Judiciary Committee expanded. There's a statute, it's the independent counsel statute. It says that an independent counsel must report to the House if and when he finds or she finds evidence that would lead to impeachment. Ken Starr has done that. He's done that with something called the Lewinsky matter. He's not done it with anything else. Notions of expanding this so that it takes an additional number of years. Remember, what makes this different is that this is already at the end of a 4-year investigation. We don't need another 4-year investigation.
So will they or won't they?
Will they
expand it? Will the Republicans vote to expand it or not?
The Republicans will expand this if, number one, they don't obey the law of dealing with a referral. If, number two, they put what they think is a partisan advantage above what should be done. And number three, they'll do it if they want because they have the votes.
Now, let me ask you, you're talking about the wrongness of dumping all this information, as Ken Starr did, and yet I hear Democrats on the committee say that Ken Starr is holding back information. On the one hand, you say you shouldn't dump On the other hand, Democrats seem to be saying, let's dump some more. What is it that Ken Starr's got that he ought to be releasing here?
Just remember, though, that just because the Congress accepts information from Ken Starr or anybody else doesn't mean that the first thing that they should do is send it out to the internet. There used to be a time where the Judiciary Committee could stop, create some standards of relevance, define what an impeachable offense was, take the evidence and compare it to those standards, and then decide how to proceed. We've done this absolutely backwards. We've dumped out all the evidence, and maybe now we'll have a meeting to discuss what the standards are. What we're asking for is the chance to go see the material that the independent counsel left behind. It is my view that in that material, there'll be relevant material. Not necessarily more relevant than the almost 20 boxes we've got so far, but certainly not less relevant.
So what you're saying is you want to go look at it, but you don't want him to give it to you. You want to go see if there's something there that he ought not to give you, or there's something that he should.
It's certainly a reasonable request for us to go with my counterpart, take a look and see if there's anything relevant. I know for a fact, because of what's not in the material that we've got, that there are some specific things I'd like to see.
What? Can you
well,
just say
I can only tell you that they've given us one side of stories when it comes to certain of the case, and there are other witnesses involved who we don't have the testimony of.
Who's calling the shots? Is it the House Speaker, or is it Henry Hyde, the chairman of the committee?
Well, I mean, I'm not in those meetings, so I can't tell you for sure, but what I could tell you is it's my observation that these decisions aren't being made solely in the Committee on the Judiciary, that the House Republican leadership is very much involved, either to determine how it plays, how it's going to work in the November elections, or perhaps what they think is the right thing to do. But I could tell you that it does appear to me when we meet in the Speaker's office, and the Speaker says he'd like to see this go into other areas, and the Speaker is as involved as he's been involved, no one should expect that he's not in some way being part of the coordinating team.
Have you, with your own ear, heard the Speaker say he wants to expand this to other areas?
Yes, I have heard the Speaker say that he could not imagine this having a short timetable, as Minority Leader Gebhardt has suggested, because he thinks that perhaps it should go into campaign finance, he thinks perhaps it should go into some of the areas being explored by other congressional committees, even though that has not been part of the referral from the independent counsel. And I think that doesn't reflect what both Americans want, but it doesn't reflect what the statute calls for.
Mr. Lowell, thank you very much. Very helpful. When we come back, we'll talk with a leading Republican on the House Judiciary Committee in just a minute.
Living needs allows you to access most of the death benefit while you are living. I was able to hand her a check. Whatever she felt like she needed to do to improve the quality of her life, she was able to make those decisions. It wasn't somebody saying, you have to die and then we'll give the money to your family. I took a great deal of pride in the fact that Prudential developed this. The financial worries were not there. Those kids were able to have a happy Hanukkah because of the benefits that we were able to pay out in living needs.
Just imagine if you could scan all your documents and save them on one piece of electronic paper. Make revisions like magic, or find information quickly and work in the virtual office as easily as you work in your real office. These are technologies Xerox is developing, so capturing knowledge and sharing it from any desktop will be this simple. The Document Company, Xerox.
In his college days, cardiologist George Lustig loved to compete. But for many years, high blood pressure held him back. Now, thanks to healthy living and medicine developed by Pfizer Research, he's back in the race. And the 2 gold medals he won in the U.S. Masters Nationals prove hypertension isn't all he's beating. Pfizer, we're part of the cure.
You know, the last I looked, the average workday lasts more than a few hours, right?
Right.
But average pain relievers may work for a few hours, then quit. Well, now there's Aleve. Aleve's the one with the strength to work on arthritis pain all day long with just 2 pills. It would take 8 Tylenol to do that. So, if your pain reliever isn't putting in a full day's work,
Fire it.
fire it and take Aleve. 2 pills, all-day relief. Works for me.
Whistles for explosions, plastic bullets, pine cones for hand grenades. That's what these GIs are learning to fight with. What's going on? Next week on the CBS Evening News.
Joining us now, Congressman Lindsey Graham, Republican on the Judiciary Committee. You just heard Abby Lowell, the chief investigator for the Democrats, saying that there's a lot of stuff down there that Ken Starr has got. And that what he proposes that he and his Republican counterpart go down there and look at it and see if there's some stuff that ought not to be released. What's your
Couldn't agree
reaction?
with that more. There's a group of members, 4 or 5 of us, that are actually starting to have lunch and breakfast and trying to talk about how can we make sure that the process goes forward and makes some sense. And that's very important to me. Mr. Starr has communicated to the committee that anything I've got you can come and look at. He just asked that it be done jointly. He doesn't want to get in the middle between a partisan fight here, and that's the right tone to take. What Abby's saying we need to do, we need to get a group of members and staff people to go over to Ken Starr's office and look through everything he's got. If there's something over there that helps the president in the opinion of the other side, let's get it. If there's some things that we find intriguing that he may not have found to be as relevant as we would deem to be so, let's go over and look at the evidence and basically talk to him, what else do you have and when do you expect it to come? And I think that's a good thing. I think that'd be very helpful. And I expect that to happen.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Now, you said you're meeting with others. Are you meeting with any Democrats yet?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Who are you meeting with?
Well, we'll just keep that between ourselves now, but we'll know more rather than less, sooner rather than later.
There is a bipartisan group
absolutely.
beginning to form.
Some former prosecutors, defense attorneys, really good folks on the committee. Let me talk a little bit about the process.
All right.
Now, I've been on a few of these shows, and if this is my 15 minutes of fame, I'd like to cash it in for something else. I never expected it to be just about this. But about the process, 363 members of the House, 70% plus of those voting, almost 80%, told us to go into executive session as a committee, told us to release the material on the 28th, and the presumption was it would go out unless there's a good reason to keep it. 60,000 documents have been gone through by the majority and minority staff, and Abby and our guys have done a good job going through it. There will be some mistakes made. We've redacted some very salacious, embarrassing, irrelevant material. We've had a lot of agreement, some disagreement, but we did what the House as a whole told us, and my counterparts on the other side, about 80% of them voted not to release, so we've had a little bit of philosophical debate about that.
Are you getting worried, though, that the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, as well as the House Speaker, are beginning to look too partisan in all of this, and that it could backfire for Republicans?
Let me tell you how this town works. About the tape, I was on another program, and we won't mention the program's name, saying, I've seen it, and it's not a knockout blow. And the public's reaction to the tape was pretty predictable to me. It played all over the world, and it's our president having to talk about pretty embarrassing stuff, and that's no pleasant thing for a country to go through. So the revulsion and the dislike of it, I think, was predictable, but the people who did spend some time felt the president was less than candid. So I understand that dynamic, but the Republicans' spin machine is not very good. Let me give you a point. The subcommittee chairman quote about Henry Hyde. Somebody from the White House.
Somebody
from the White House said that Henry Hyde told our ranking member, well, I'm just a subcommittee chairman in this process. You know, I'm sort of doing what Newt tells me. Nothing could be further from the truth.
He's not running it then? The Speaker's not running this?
Henry Hyde is running the committee, and we're fulfilling the mandate of the House. Is the Speaker involved in this event? You better believe it. Is the House leadership on the Democratic side involved? You better believe it. They ought to be involved. But I'm involved, and I can tell you this. The training I've had as a lawyer, my belief that an impeachment is the most serious thing you can do in a democracy, overturning an election, that I'm going to be driven by the evidence. The Speaker, I think, has done a darn good job of trying to give the committee the authority to do what we need to do, and that authority was blessed by 70 to 80% of the House.
Do you think, from what you've seen of this so far, that there is a, quote, impeachable offense in here?
There is a handful of accusations that may rise to the level to get my vote for an article of impeachment. And I say that based on this standard. There's so much politics involved in an impeachment process, there's also the law. And when the two merge, I want the law to win out. My standard is simply this. If you or I engaged in like conduct, we would have some serious legal liability. There's a handful of things that the president's been accused of that would subject the average citizen to go in jail. Felony perjury before a grand jury. I know the tape was uncomfortable to look at, but one day somebody's going to have to look at that tape in light of all the other evidence and judge who's lying and who's not. And one way you do that is judge the credibility of the people who are testifying. And the president is on tape, and you can look at his credibility. That tape will become important. Orchestrating perjury on the part of other people. The weak in this country can sue the strong, and I've traveled all over the world, and the weak have a chance to go in a courtroom, you got to give them a fair shake. Nobody should be able to violate the rules, orchestrate perjury. Nobody should be able to lie. Nobody should be able to conceal evidence. We'll lose the rule of law.
And that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much, Congressman. Back with the final word in a minute.
Will you ever own a personal satellite? Will you ever say, fill her up with hydrogen? Are microfibers just a trend? One thing's for sure, opportunities abound. And every day we look at them through a microscope. Like a peek, let's get to work. Solomon Smith Barney.
It was the best of times. It was frustrating. There was a digital information network and a paper one too. But getting them to work together wasn't easy until along came the Xerox Document Center. Now what's stored digitally is retrieved on paper, and what's on paper is easily scanned in digitally. Suddenly, everyone can work smarter, sharing knowledge from every desktop. The Document Company, Xerox.
Since we spent so much time last week going over the president's words to the grand jury, I decided to spend the weekend going through all the email, letters, and testimony that Monica Lewinsky gave to the jurors. As a fellow said, it's my job, man. But I'm glad I did. Her tarty public persona aside, what struck me as she bared her soul to the grand jury was just how young she was, and for all her fast ways, how vulnerable she seemed. Her worries were the worries of her generation. She worried about her weight, about being taken seriously, and as she wrote to a friend, about finding someone someday who would just give her a hug. Instead, she got tangled up with the president. She became a small part of his life. He became the center of hers. She let herself dream that they might have a future together, lived for the minute or two when he might say something nice to her. When he felt the need and summoned her, she always brought a little gift. One time, she even brought a gift for his dog. When he gave her little trinkets, she was beside herself. All my life, she wrote, everyone has always said I am a difficult person to shop for, yet you managed to choose absolutely perfect presents, gifts for my soul. All that for a book of poems and some junk. But that's how it is when you're starstruck and hopelessly in love. I know, what she did was wrong, but I feel sorry for the kid. Well, that's our broadcast. Thanks for watching.
This portion of Face the Nation was sponsored by the Document Company, Xerox, and by Bayer Corporation, a research-based company in healthcare, chemicals, and imaging technologies. This broadcast was produced by CBS News, which is solely responsible for the selection of today's guests and topics. It originated in Washington, D.C.
Experience CBS News.
Baby-proof your home. Protect your little ones from danger. We'll help you find all the hidden trouble spots before they do. This is life-saving information, plus your latest weather.
This week
on This Morning.
The address is CBS.
Welcome home.
From the family of minivans that have won more total awards than any other, with an available second sliding door, standard air conditioning, roomy 7-passenger seating, and easy-out roller seats. With all this, you may think it's one of the most expensive minivans you can buy, but it's not. It's the lowest price